This is the X-Zone Broadcast Network, broadcasting worldwide on broadcast affiliates and satellite program providers, including CNN Broadcast Network, Sirius Satellite Network, Star Media, Good News Radio Network, Angel Broadcast Network, Wiki Broadcast Network, and WPBN TV. For more information on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, visit us at www.xzbn.net.
Did you know that when you're on the road with limited data or Wi-Fi, you can still listen to the X-Zone Radio Show with Rob McConnell, The Science of Magic with Gwilda Wiyaka, X-1, Dimension X, Space Patrol, and every minute of the X-Zone Broadcast Network by calling 213-401-0080, courtesy of Audio Now. No smartphone, app, or internet needed. It saves your data plan and it's free if you have unlimited minutes. Call 213-401-0080 to listen on any phone, anytime, anywhere. Remember 213-401-0080 for the best of the paranormal, parapsychology, and sci-fi radio programming anywhere, 24/7, 365.
The X-Zone Radio Show with Rob McConnell is largely an opinion talk show. All opinions, comments, or statements of fact expressed by Rob McConnell's guests are strictly their own and are not to be construed as those of the X-Zone Radio Show or endorsed in any manner by Rob McConnell, Relmar McConnell Media Company, the X-Zone Broadcast Network, its affiliated networks, stations, employees, or advertisers.
All Hit Radio.
Welcome to the X-Zone, a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. Now, here's your host, Rob McConnell.
Welcome back, everyone. This is the X-Zone. I am Rob McConnell. We're coming to you from our broadcast center in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada, on the Mutual Broadcast Network, the Talkstar Radio Network, the X-Zone Broadcast Network, and on the Digital Broadcast Network as well. Now, if you'd like to send me an email, xzone@xzoneradiotv.com, on all social media sites, X-Zone Radio TV. And you can always listen to past shows as well as find out where we've been in the past, what we're doing in the present, and where we intend on being in the future at xzoneradio.com. My guest this hour is the one and only Michael Horn. We've had the pleasure of having Michael on the show many times. He is a good friend of the X-Zone, and he is the authorized American media representative for the Billy Meier Contacts. And his website is www.theyfly.com. Which he has researched since 1979 and proved to be absolutely authentic. Joining me now is Michael Horn. And Michael, always great having you back here with us in the X-Zone. How are you, old friend?
Well, I'm fine, Rob. Thank you very much for having me on again.
Now listen, Michael, these are trying times, and over the years, as you know, and I'm sure nobody who has listened to the X-Zone for any amount of time knows that I was not a believer in Meier many years ago.
Right.
However, over the years, I have seen firsthand what Meier has written about years ago come to fruition, undeniably. And I have to ask you, Mike, how did you get started with the Billy Meier Group?
Well, actually, I walked into a bookstore in Los Angeles in 1979, and there was the first photo book that was put out by the lead investigator, Wendell Stevens, and Britt there's a married couple who were investigators. And the photos of Meier's UFOs were so stunningly clear and authentic, and the information in that book was so compelling that I felt I had found something of incomparable value. And yet it would be another about 7 years before I would find the next piece of information, next body of work, which would have been the transcripts that covered the conversations Meier was having with these extraterrestrial human beings called the Pleiaren, and that spanned about a 3-year period from 1975 to 1978. So there were 1,800 or so pages of these conversations, and that drew me deeper and deeper into the case and its material, and one thing led to another, and 37 years later, I'm still quite passionately involved with it.
Michael, over the years, Billy has, written some very controversial things. No two ways about it. And yet here we are in the year 2016, and prophecies, for lack of better words, that Billy talked about 20, 30, 40 years ago are happening. How do you explain this to people who may look at you as if you had 4 heads, 16 eyes, and green hair?
Well, a lot of people, as a matter of fact, probably a majority of people, certainly in what we would call the industrialized world, take many things for granted that are preposterous. And that would include, in my opinion, politics and definitely religion. There's got to be, dozens to hundreds of religions. They can't all be right, which means that by definition, at least in someone's eyes, they're all wrong. Yet people are, continuously focusing on and participating in religion and politics. They have no trouble being engrossed and engaged in all sorts of, techno entertainment and sports and celebrities, and have largely, to a great degree, lost a sense of reality about their own lives and real life.
Take a step back in time and discover old Florida cuisine at Marsh Landing Restaurant in Fellsmere. Enjoy delicacies such as frog legs, gator tail, catfish, and swamp cabbage, or enjoy the more traditional cuisine like hand-cut Angus steaks, ribs, and seafood. Join us for breakfast with a southern flair featuring sweet potato pancakes, biscuits and gravy, and much more. Planning a party? Marsh Landing's private dining room can accommodate groups from 8 to 80 people. While you're visiting, enjoy the historic pictures, artifacts, and stories that line the walls. Marsh Landing is truly a unique experience. Marsh Landing Restaurant, 44 North Broadway in historic Fellsmere, or visit marshlandingrestaurant.com. Marsh Landing, old Florida cuisine at its best.
This is Johanna Carroll, host of Dialogue with Divinity on the X-Zone Broadcast Network. While walking along Kaanapali Beach in Maui this past year, I kept discovering all these shells and coral in the shape of hearts. My dialogue with Divinity was very simple. Do you want me to do a retreat to heal people's hearts in Maui next year? And of course, the answer was yes. As a master spiritual teacher, I am offering you a neat retreat called Rise, May 8th through the 12th, 2017, and the chance of a lifetime to rest at a 5-star resort for 5 days and experience a spiritual renewal of your heart and soul. Kaanapali is one of the top 5 beaches in the world. This stunning resort has undergone a $40 million renovation. I walked the entire property, checked out the room choices on your behalf, and I must say it is stunning. Our conference room faces the ocean with sliding glass doors. Maui is known as Mother Maui because it is a soft, gentle, healing energy. In the embrace of Mother Maui, you will feel yourself rising from the limitations of an ordinary life to an extraordinary journey of peace, bliss, and harmony, a greater sense of clarity. Our Rise retreat ignites renewal in the sacred elements of air, water, earth, fire, and wind. There's plenty of free time to enjoy all that Maui has to offer. A small deposit is required now to reserve your space, as this retreat, it will sell out. For more details, please go to johannacarroll.com and register today. Aloha, and I'll see you in mystical Maui.
Michael Horn is our guest this hour. We're discussing the Billy Meier contacts as well as Billy Meier's, what are they called? Predictions?
Prophecies and predictions.
Prophecies and predictions,
yes.
Yeah. So I'm sorry I had to cut you off there for that break, Michael, but please continue.
Okay, well, I'm not exactly sure, but I think I was speaking about the fact that I got involved with the Meier material and found, the 1,800 pages of transcripts 7 years after my initial introduction, and that was, quite an eye opener. It drew me farther into the case, and ever since then, I've been involved. Some 37 years later, pursuing everything I could in the Meier case.
When it comes to what's happening in the world today with Donald Trump, the Republican Party, the Democratic Party, the Hillary movement, what's happening in the USSR, I'm sorry, not the USSR anymore, but in Russia, what President Putin is saying, what did Billy Meier have to say about what is going on in the world today, Michael?
Oh, gosh. Well, there is so much, of course, and I don't want to, start rattling and forget that people need to be able to focus on little pieces here as they come up because there's so many of them. But if we take the current world concern, and that world concern being about radical Islam, we can know that Meier specifically foretold this trouble, and it goes back. His warnings on this go back to 1958. And I'll be able to tell you, as a matter of fact, in 1958, this is exactly, translated into English, that is, this is exactly what he warned about. He said, "And it will be that fanatical Islamists carry out bloody revenge on the distant descendants of the Christians for their earlier crusades, when they accomplish their deadly and destructive acts through irrepressible terror all over the world." Now, there's a bunch of words here to pay attention to. He doesn't say fanatical Muslims, he says Islamists. And Meier draws a distinction, the Islamists being people who have corrupted the Islamic faith and inserted all of their own bloodthirsty psychopathic meaning where it did not exist and does not exist in Islam. And when they speak here of bloody revenge on the distant descendants of the Christians for their earlier crusades, this is happening now. As a matter of fact, in one of the articles, I saw an article that was printed where some Islamic radical even referred to Crusader France. He referred to France as Crusader France. And that's, kind of validating what Meier wrote nearly 60 years ago. And then he says, deadly and destructive acts through irrepressible terror all over the world. That's pretty specific, and it is a warning that what we are seeing now, Rob, is not isolated and only occurring or going to occur for some folks over there, wherever we think over there is. This is the type of thing that we have been. Look, I put this information about the dangers of attacks in France and in Europe, which are going on now. I put that on a DVD of mine in 2004. That's 12 years ago. Meier published it in 58, 81, 87, 95, and still people go to sleep. You're talking about people, as you said, looking at me as if I have 14 eyes or whatever. But this is happening. It is going on now. And we are not going to see it end simply, by wishful thinking or pretending that somehow these nasty people are going to go away. Ain't the case. Meier specifically foretold this. So, yeah.
So, does he come up with any solutions how we can solve this problem, or have those who have visited Billy in the past, do they give us any suggestion on what to do, or is this what the ultimate solution, the cause and effect will be if we do not take appropriate action?
Well, I believe it was November of 2014, quite possibly. I'll be able to look it up. We had an article that was called "The Only Way to Stop the IS," and actually the very specific information in that case was also something that was previously published by Aaron and Meier, even independently of this Islamic stuff. And what that is, we published that in November 28th of 2014. The only way to stop the IS. And what is that means? It's called a true international, a global peace combat force. That means troops drawn from every country on earth, and that force would by necessity have to number at least 300,000 soldiers. That was the figure given 2 years ago, November of 2014. It probably needs more now. At that point, we are told that the IS, the Islamist State, already had 100,000 soldiers. So that can only be put down by a mammoth force, 3 times the number of soldiers that the IS possesses, and that they have to be confronted militarily, given the option to surrender, to be taken into custody, tried, and imprisoned if convicted permanently for the rest of their lives. Or if they don't surrender, they would have to be literally destroyed militarily. This is the first time ever in the Meier material that they have told us we need to launch a military action. Our country, the U.S., has been busy for the past, 80 years or whatever it is, running around launching military attacks on people all over the world, which have been unprovoked. Over 200 attacks. This is one whereby we have to participate. We're not the leader. It doesn't fall under our rule. It has to be a true international force that comes together. Now, we've been publishing this in different blogs for some time. I've talked about it on radio shows and interviews and put it in films and live presentations and all the rest of it. The first sign of recognition, if we can call it that appeared, and I'm not going to say that it means that everybody has read Billy Meier, paid attention, but we have tried to get this information to everybody. So just about a month and change ago, March 24th, there was an article in RT, Russia Today, and also a video where General Michael Flynn, who was the former head of U.S. military intelligence, came out and basically expressed what Meier was talking about. We have to have a true international force. We've got to get past our issues with Russia, which are largely the making of this country. It's it's really a crime the way we have provoked Russia. and continue to do it. Meier, of course, warned a lot about that before, including last year. So, Rob, what we're told here is that this kind of a force is actually something that an American who had been the head of U.S. military intelligence is now calling for. But then, just today, as I think you may know, I put out another blog, and that blog refers to the fact that just as of today, Vladimir Putin, basically called for the same thing. He called it a modern, non-aligned system of international security to fight the threat of global terror, which is primarily and predominantly referring now to the IS, Islamist State, ISIS, and Al Qaeda is in there too. But this is what Putin is calling for.
Yeah.
Many years ago, let me add, the play Aaron told Meier that his material is read by the hierarchy in many countries, including Russia. That means Putin, who is a former head of the KGB, has access to Meier's material, which may also be reflected in a recent policy of Russia's to do as Meier had suggested and get a project together to deflect the Apophis asteroid incoming. Now, the Russians, as a people, are very, old history, very tough, long-suffering people with a lot of character and spirit. They haven't been trying to get into more trouble with us, but we in America, we simply cannot resist wanting to go and create chaos and war and try to dominate the world. In a lot of the same material where Meier advises about these, things that are coming if we don't do something, he also specifically warns about the, insane policies of the U.S., which are going to bring us here some horrific results. And I might add, unfortunately, tied into that has been mentioned Canada, that you are going to be dragged into this too. So I'll pause for a moment.
Why don't we do that? Why don't we take our news break right now and give us time to reflect? Wow.
Okay.
Michael, always great having you on the show, my good friend. Exonation, Michael Horn is our very...
This is the X-Zone Broadcast Network, broadcasting worldwide on broadcast affiliates and satellite program providers, including CNN Broadcast Network, Sirius Satellite Network, Star Media, Good News Radio Network, Angel Broadcast Network, Wiki Broadcast Network, and WPBN TV. For more information on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, visit us at www.xzbn.net.
Did you know that when you're on the road with limited data or Wi-Fi, you can still listen to the X-Zone Radio Show with Rob McConnell, The Science of Magic with Gwilda Wiyaka, X-1, Dimension X, Space Patrol, and every minute of the X-Zone Broadcast Network by calling 213-401-0080, courtesy of Audio Now. No smartphone, app, or internet needed. It saves your data plan and it's free if you have unlimited minutes. Call 213-401-0080 to listen on any phone, anytime, anywhere. Remember 213-401-0080 for the best of the paranormal, parapsychology, and sci-fi radio programming anywhere, 24/7, 365. Exonation, Michael Horn is our special guest this hour, www.theyfly.com. Michael, can you share any specifics with us that might...
Sure, Rob. In addition to the things that we touched upon, I'm going to give you some quotes from some of Meier's, verifiably previously published prophecies and predictions. The first ones pertain to this whole thing with Islam, and these will be from what are called the Hanok prophecies. They're linked on my website. People can find them easily. And here's what it says. I'm starting at number 175. I won't read all the numbers. I'll just read the content for you. And here's what Meier started to say. And it will be that the fanatics of Islam will rise up against the countries of Europe, and all will shake and quiver. Everything in the West will be destroyed. England will be conquered and thrown down to the lowest level of misery. And the fanatics and warriors of Islam will retain their power for a long time. However, not only Europe will be affected, but ultimately all the countries and peoples of the earth, as the great horror expands to a war that will encompass the world. Now, these are called the Enoch prophecies. Prophecies means things that will occur if people do not act and make corrections in time. So it doesn't have to come about. But if we do not change for the better, we get that. Now, here is more, especially about France. Let's see here. All right. However, the main objective of the aggressors will be to bring all of Europe under their military control, and for that purpose, France will be selected to be the headquarters. France will not only be invaded by the aggressors from the outside, but will be conquered from within as a result of collaborative forces and other forces. Here it comes. This can be envisioned as being the many foreigners of a different religion living in France at that time, and specifically Islam, which will be this force working from within. I think it's pretty clear.
When was this written, Mike?
1987.
And this just happened within the last 2 years.
Yes.
My God.
Yes.
Now,
I mean,
there's no debating what he was talking about.
No, this is not Nostradamus.
I was just going to say
with
that.
Eagle flies. And
Yeah.
the rest of it. This is specific. He names the countries
Yep.
and the things that are going to happen. So, I mean, what does it take for people to go, wait a minute, hold on? And this stuff, of course, has been online in English, I think, since 2002. So it's still, even in English, it precedes all of this. So let me give you a little bit more, because this speaks about the U.S.
Okay.
With her global conflicts, which are continuously instigated by her and which will continue far into the future, America is creating enormous hatred against her worldwide in many countries. As a result, America will experience enormous catastrophes, which will reach proportions barely imaginable to people of Earth. The destruction of the WTC, i.e., the World Trade Center, by terrorists will only be the beginning. Pretty specific stuff.
Can't deny it.
No. In the same 1987 document, America and Russia will have the most terrible weapons of mass destruction at their disposal. A fact which is already the case to a certain extent today. And they will clash with violent force against each other at that time of conflict, whereby Canada will also be dragged into this conflict. Canada. As already mentioned, enormous natural catastrophes, watch this, and rolling walls of fire and violent hurricanes will rage all across America, while in addition, all the terrible effects of war will bring thousand-fold deaths, destruction, and annihilation. America's largest cities will be absolutely destroyed, and firestorms will cause great disaster and misery. Now, I mean, we have to sit here. Why would Canada be dragged into this conflict?
Good
This
question.
is 1987. Meier said, well, I can give you my take on it
Okay.
because in the past maybe 4 years or so, as Meier also predicted, we have that on film, Canada is among the countries that started to contest Russia's claims for mineral rights at the North Pole area.
That is true.
Right?
Yeah.
And Canada, within the last, let's say, 2 years, made a treaty of some sort with the Eastern European state, I guess you would call it, of Georgia. That didn't go over very well with Russia either. 1987, those issues do not exist. And I certainly don't have to tell you what a horror it would be to have rolling walls of fire, because already, I'm not saying it's from this, but what's going on up in Alberta
Yes.
is horrendous and monumental, and hopefully it's going to be contained. But we are in these times. I mean, Meier talks about firestorms twice here in just 3 sentences. And then, you look at this stuff, and he even speaks about China potentially getting into a war first with India. And that China is going to attack India with biological weapons and kill 30 million people around New Delhi. All of this seems, like couldn't be. I mean, 1987, we weren't worrying about that. And even now, this whole thing, I've got a blog coming up this week that's going to address more about the whole thing with biological weapons. But I think maybe I think I may have done it in today's blog.
Wow.
Pardon me, about with Putin.
Well, what do you think Billy has a take on Donald Trump and Putin saying that he basically approves of Donald Trump?
Well, Rob, Meier did say there's a couple articles I don't have them right at my fingertips. Maybe I'll be able to find them. But he had said, I think it was a year or two, when Putin came out and called out our country as just being warmongers here, and it was in no fancy terms, that we were out to try to spread our power around the world, which is echoed, of course, here in this as well. This is something that Meier had already commented on in terms of saying that Putin is not wrong. Now, he's been clear. He said, look, Putin is not an angel. This is a very tough man. This is not well, I'm going to revise what I was going to say a little. He's a guy who is a bit image oriented, a little showbiz. He's not at all, shy about parading around and doing macho stuff. But, he's a tough person and has a great deal of love for his country. There is something about the Russians, I think, where, their love of Mother Russia is a very genuine thing. And they're tired of being invaded by everybody and attacked and drawn into wars. So, I just think I came upon the thing with Putin, and I'm going to see if I did find it. I think I actually did, because it was back in 2007. And that Billy, he says in this, if you want me to, go through it a little bit, he's talking with Ptah, one of the extraterrestrials, and he says to him, "What do you think about this? I heard it in the news today about Russian President Putin uh, has energetically spoken his mind regarding the politics of the USA. Putin said the USA is striving for world rule, as I just alluded to, respectively
Yeah.
world power, and thereby also promotes the resuming of the arms race, interferes in the trade of foreign countries, and practices warlike actions." And then Ptah actually says, "Well, that's actually something extraordinary that I saw just 2 days ago through a look into the future." They do. Sometimes they don't wait for the paper, I guess. Therefore, your and our explanatory efforts in regard to the USA's real machinations and plans for world rule bear the first fruit, which Russia's President Putin has now brought to ripeness, in that he named the actual and reprehensible facts which rage in U.S. politics. And he goes on and on. I have this on my blog or my website somewhere. It's all over the place.
Yeah.
A lot of stuff here. So, as far as what Meier said about Putin, he's also said, interestingly enough, that in the future, it's going to be Russia, strangely enough, that is going to bring kind of the spiritual light to the world. But that's going to be at a time after which, I'm afraid, if these prophecies fulfill, that there's going to be an awful lot of grief and war and suffering, to a large degree, of course, because of the conflict between the US and Russia and China. Now, as far back as 1975, Meier warned Russia and China, or the USSR, if you will, and China, were working behind the scenes and would ultimately attack us. 1975. That's 31 years ago.
You know what? I think the world is going crazy. I really do.
Yeah.
Maybe it's because of the climate control or the ozone layer or the chemtrails or whatever. But this just came across my desk earlier today. Listen to this. This is an online petition. We, the people of Canada, demand, now this is to the Governor General of Canada, by the way. We, the people of Canada, demand you review the following petition against Prime Minister Trudeau on the charge of high treason to the people of Canada. He has failed to keep Canada safe in the midst of Syrian refugee crisis and is putting all of its citizens at risk with his actions. He has appointed an advisor who has ties with Hamas and other terrorist organizations. This insanity has to stop. We, the people of Canada, demand you review this petition and respond to the review of high treason at once and remove him from office.
Wow. Well, you asked about Trump.
Yeah.
I am unaware at this time of anything that Meier or the Player have said one way or the other, and I don't know that they will say too much, because they don't tend to get involved in politics in the sense that when things are going on politically, like an election, that they start voicing their opinions. Not that the whole world is resting on it, but they will, if they discuss it, then they will publish the information generally after an election. So they can say, this is what we said at the time, this is how it turned out, whatever. But here's the thing with someone like Trump, the phenomenon that happened in this country so far, in terms of the people who had voted to nominate Trump as the Republican presidential candidate, which is yet, of course, to be officially finalized, they bucked everything that the corrupt, ridiculous, horrendous Republican establishment, and the Democratic establishment as well, have long stood for. And they had floated like 16 other candidates were out there, all of whom were varying degrees of representing the status quo, the elite, whatever you want to call them. So Trump said, look, illegal immigration has got to be stopped. He says he's going to build a wall. Well, that remains to be seen. The trade deal that he's referred to, this, I think it's TPP, that has to be repealed or prevented from being enacted and enforced. And then the whole thing about getting jobs back into the U.S. and these are, three of the things that he's spoke about, and that resonated with people, because illegal immigration, as we can see from what's happening in Europe, if we can't get it in our own countries yet, look at what Merkel did, and Meier talked about that a lot. This is the beginning of all of Europe will shake and quiver. She opened the door. And in a recent blog, if I may say so, Meier said there are now, as of January, 3.5 months ago, the Plejaren counted 17,461 IS fighters who had snuck in and are now ensconced in various parts of Europe, not just Germany, waiting to do whatever they're going to do when they decide to do it. That's 17,461. I mean, it's a huge force. And these are terrorists. These aren't diplomats.
I have a call back for 866 negative K, nothing further, just
In over 36 years in law enforcement, I've learned a few things. The most important is the proper gathering and preservation of evidence is vital to putting the bad guy behind bars. It's no different in the world of paranormal investigation. Whether it's the search for the afterlife, cryptozoology, extraterrestrials, and UFOs, how we gather that evidence of their existence, preserve that same evidence, and present it to a court of our peers will make the ultimate difference in proving the existence of worlds and entities that are beyond our imagination. Come with me on a journey that seeks to prove with undisputable evidence what man has struggled to believe for centuries. Join me, Larry Lawson, host of the Paranormal Stakeout, coming to the X Zone Broadcast Network. Check out the broadcast schedule for Paranormal Stakeout with yours truly, Larry Lawson, at www.xzbn.net. For more information about me, my travels, and my team, check out our website at www.paranormalfbi.com or join us on Facebook at Florida Bureau of Paranormal.
I am Dr. Carl O'Helvey, founder, president of a new cancer foundation focusing on evidence-based physical, mental, and spiritual interventions, including natural cancer cures, prayer, meditation, affirmations, nutrition, and other related holistic cancer prevention and cure modalities. These are used in cancer education, research, and financing care. I ask for your help to continue this important work by donating at www.holisticcancerfoundation.com.
You're listening to the X Zone Broadcast Network, www.xzbn.net. Explanation, my good friend Michael Horn is with us this hour, and he's going to be sticking around for the next hour as well because we still have so much to cover when it comes to the Billy Meier prophecies. But before we get back to Michael, I'd just like to read you all an op-ed that I published today. And it goes as follows. Okay, if the people of the United States have legally elected Donald Trump to be their candidate to face the Democratic candidate for president of the United States, how can the rich and powerful people of the United States who have tried and failed in the past be able to thwart what we the people, and that's in quotations, have voted on? Is it not a perfect example of a corrupt political system? I believe that Donald Trump is a threat to the establishment because they fear what he will expose when it comes to corruption that has been covered up by the good old boys in Washington for way too long. The United States of America is undoubtedly a business, and as such, a business person will be far more successful than a politician who depends on business people to make it work. Plus, let's face it, Donald has a proven track record to the American people that, let's face it, Donald Trump has proven to the American people that the system does work, that if you don't have to be a politician to be president of the United States of America, that anyone can be president. It looks like Romney, Bush, Ryan, and others who do not support their presumptive candidate, Donald Trump, might have something to hide, and they really don't want it exposed. It'll be very interesting to see how far the establishment will go to deny the people of the United States who voted in a legal process to which Donald Trump was elected as the representative candidate for the Republican Party. Food for thought. I am Rob McConnell. I just find it ironic that people vote, and just because the vote doesn't go the way the rich and the powerful want it to go, they can start going against their own party. Does that make sense?
Well, sure, because it must be said that Meier published years ago the fact that George Bush, I think it was the re-election, that he was re-elected because they had stored something like 400,000 votes in computers that they released because Bush had lost the election, actually. A lot of people have, thought that anyhow. And when people are very malleable, people who get all excited about politics and go to conventions and wave flags, it's very externalized stuff. They want that rush, they want the excitement, the social stuff, and the feeling that they're really doing something of importance. For the most part, it's a deteriorating situation. It's resulted in the worst of the worst usually getting in to office. There are some exceptions. Trump is a businessman, and while there are good things about that, it remains to be seen if he possesses wisdom for dealing with other situations. He's probably the best person of all those running to deal with someone like Putin, because he's got a strong enough character and he is a wheeler dealer, and Putin would probably respect that, and they might be able to pull something off there, But we really have to look very, very carefully. In 19, let's see, I think it was 2012, maybe 2014. There's a contact where Meier and the player are talking about what they discussed in 1975.
Wow. Michael, let's talk more about this when we come back from the news break. Exo Nation, Michael Horn is going to be staying with us for another hour because we have so much to talk about. You can find out more about Michael at www.